If you're over 60, here's the truth you need to hear. Muscle loss isn't just a part of aging, it's a signal. A signal that your body's repair systems are slowing down and your nutritional needs are changing rapidly. Now here's the twist. There's a humble grain, often overlooked, that may fight sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle mass, and help you rebuild lean muscle faster than you think. And no, it sets not rice, it sets not quinoa. It's something even more powerful, especially when combined with a longevity-based lifestyle. Let's explore the science. Sarcopenia is one of those conditions that we used to accept as an unavoidable part of aging. You hit your 60s, and suddenly you're told that muscle loss is just normal. But what if I told you that muscle decline isn't a passive consequence of time passing, it's a biological signal, a warning flare from your cells, and more importantly, it's reversible. What we call sarcopenia is the progressive loss of skeletal muscle mass and function that begins subtly as early as your 30s, but becomes much more apparent after 60. It's estimated that after age 60, individuals can lose up to 1–2% of muscle mass per year, and strength declines even faster, about 3% per year. But what's happening under the surface? Muscle isn't simply about strength or aesthetics. It's one of the most metabolically active, endocrine-like organs in your body. When you move, when you resist gravity, when you challenge your muscles, they release molecules called myokines. These molecules act like hormones. They talk to your brain, your liver, your immune system. They regulate inflammation, metabolism, even mood and cognition. So when muscle begins to shrink and weaken, it subs not just your strength that fades, it subs a systemic breakdown in communication. Sarcopenia then is your body subs way of saying, I accept not receiving the signals I need to keep the system young. What causes those signals to stop? We now know it's not just aging itself. It's the loss of specific inputs, mechanical, nutritional, hormonal, and mitochondrial, that your body used to receive more consistently in youth. Let's look at the mechanical input first. In youth, frequent physical movement sends constant signals to maintain and repair muscle fibers. But after 60, many people dramatically reduce resistance training or daily movement. The absence of load tells the body, you don't need this muscle anymore, and the body is efficient. If you don't use it, it begins to dismantle it. But if you start using it again, even after decades, the machinery to rebuild muscle still exists. This is what we mean by plasticity in aging. The capacity for change, even reversal, is still there. The second key signal is nutritional. And this one is where sarcopenia becomes dangerous, because many older adults are actually undernourished in very specific ways. Not in calories, but in protein quality, amino acid density, and anabolic nutrients like lysine, and magnesium. Older muscles develop what's called anabolic resistance. They become less responsive to the same amount of dietary protein. So to rebuild muscle, seniors need not just more protein, but smarter protein, and timing becomes critical. The nutrient signal must be paired with movement to be most effective. Now, the hormonal and mitochondrial layers add even more complexity, but also opportunity. As we age, levels of key hormones that support muscle mass, such as testosterone, growth hormone, and IGF-1, begin to decline. But rather than trying to replace these directly, which can have risks, the more promising strategy is to activate upstream pathways that regulate these hormones naturally. That's where nutrients like amaranth and longevity pathways like AMPK and sirtuins come into play. One of the key insights from aging science is that aging is not simply wear and tear. It's the result of cellular pathways that get deregulated. Think of aging as software that's running outdated code. The hardware, the body, is still incredibly capable. You just need to send the right instructions. But on the flip side, you also want to activate AMPK, which helps regulate energy metabolism, fat burning, and mitochondrial biogenesis. AMPK activation tells your body, we need to be more efficient, clean house, repair mitochondria. This dual strategy, activate MTOR for growth, AMPK for repair, is what I believe represents the future of muscle preservation and longevity. In this light, sarcopenia becomes a choice, not a fate. It's not something that happens to you, it's something that happens when the body's inputs are misaligned with its biological needs. What's exciting is that the science now shows we can correct these inputs. Resistance training in older adults, even into their 70s and 80s, has been shown to dramatically improve muscle mass, strength, and mitochondrial density. These are not subtle improvements, they are life-changing. And when combined with nutrient-dense foods, that support muscle signaling, like amaranth, rich in lysine, magnesium, and complete protein, you're not just halting sarcopenia, you're reversing it. What we're doing in the lab is working to understand how these interventions interact with epigenetic aging. In my own research, we've seen that muscles in older mice, when treated with interventions that activate longevity genes, begin to function like much younger tissue. They become more insulin sensitive, more resistant to damage, more metabolically active. It's the same principle that applies to humans. In short, sarcopenia is not the end. It's a signal, and the body is still listening. If you start sending the right messages through strategic movement, targeted nutrition, mitochondrial support, and metabolic balance, your muscles will respond. Even if you're 60, 70, or 80, the potential for regeneration is real. You're not losing strength because of your age. You're losing strength because your cells aren't being told they're still needed. Start moving. Start feeding your body like it matters, because it does. And remember, aging is not a straight line. It's a series of choices. And muscle health is one of the most powerful choices you can control when it comes to muscle loss. After 60, most people instinctively think they need to eat more meat, more eggs, maybe even protein shakes. And while those are helpful, what we're learning through the lens of molecular biology is this: the source and profile of your protein matters just as much as the amount. Your muscles don't just want protein. They want the right amino acids at the right time with the right supporting nutrients. That brings us to an ancient grain with a modern relevance: amaranth. Not many people in the Western world talk about it, but in longevity science, this humble seed is starting to gain attention for its unique ability to stimulate muscle repair while supporting cellular health. What makes amaranth remarkable is that it's a complete plant protein. Unlike most grains, which are deficient in at least one essential amino acid, amaranth contains all 9 essential amino acids, which your body cannot synthesize on its own. Among them is lysine, which is especially important for aging adults. Why? Because lysine plays a critical role in collagen production, muscle repair, calcium absorption, and even the synthesis of hormones and enzymes. Lysine, in particular, tends to be low in plant-based diets and becomes even more critical as we age, since the body becomes less efficient at using amino acids to build and maintain muscle. This phenomenon, known as anabolic resistance, is a major driver of sarcopenia. So if you're over 60, simply eating the same amount of protein you did when you were 30 is no longer enough. Your body requires a higher quality of proteins that can break through the resistance and activate muscle synthesis effectively. That's what makes amaranth so powerful. It doesn't just offer complete protein, it offers bioavailable amino acids in a natural, easy-to-digest form, without the inflammatory byproducts sometimes associated with animal protein. This is important because chronic inflammation is one of the key accelerators of aging and muscle wasting. In fact, in aging biology, we have a term for this: inflammaging, the slow, persistent, systemic inflammation that wears down tissues and cellular function over time. What you want instead is a nutrient source that not only feeds your muscles, but also helps calm inflammation, support mitochondria, and nourish your cells, and amaranth does just that. Let's go deeper. Amaranth is rich in magnesium, a mineral that plays an essential role in over 300 enzymatic reactions in the body, many of which are involved in muscle contraction, nerve transmission, and ATP production. When your magnesium levels are low, not only does performance suffer, but your recovery slows, and your mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cell, start to function less efficiently. Magnesium deficiency is widespread among older adults and is often overlooked when addressing fatigue and muscle loss. But amaranth doesn't stop at magnesium. It also contains calcium, phosphorus, and iron, which are foundational to muscle contraction, oxygen delivery, and tissue repair. These minerals support the biomechanical side of muscle health, ensuring that once new muscle fibers are synthesized, they can perform well under load. Another compound in amaranth worth noting is squalene. While better known for its use in skincare, squalene is also a potent antioxidant and a precursor to cholesterol and steroid hormones in the body. What this means in practical terms is that squalene may support membrane integrity, mitochondrial function, and hormonal balance, all of which contribute to cellular resilience and tissue regeneration. Now, in the context of longevity, we care deeply about how nutrients affect genetic pathways, especially those that control repair, growth, and energy metabolism. With aging, we want to avoid chronic activation of growth pathways like MTOR because they can accelerate cellular aging. But we also need short, well-timed activations of MTOR to promote muscle synthesis, particularly after resistance training or nutrient intake. Amaranth is ideal in this scenario. Its amino acid profile, rich in lysine and leucine, gently activates mTOR, helping to trigger anabolic signaling when it's needed most, without keeping it chronically elevated. Think of it like flicking on a light switch only when you need to see, not leaving it on 24/7. This kind of targeted intermittent growth stimulation is key to building strength while still promoting longevity. On the flip side, amaranth also supports AMPK activation, especially when consumed during fasting windows or combined with metabolic stress from exercise. AMPK is like your cellular energy sensor. It tells your cells to clean up, recycle damaged components, and create new mitochondria. It's the pathway that fasting, cold exposure, and exercise all activate, and it's central to healthy aging. By supporting both mTOR in moderation and AMPK, amaranth helps strike the delicate balance between growth and repair. One of the most exciting findings from recent nutritional genomics research is that certain foods can act like molecular signals influencing gene expression. This is the future of nutrition, not just thinking of food as calories, but as instructions to your DNA. And amaranth, with its combination of complete protein, anti-inflammatory nutrients, mitochondrial cofactors, and hormone precursors, sends the kind of instructions your aging muscles need to thrive. It's also worth noting that amaranth is gluten-free, making it safe for those with gluten sensitivities or celiac disease, conditions that can become more problematic with age due to changes in gut permeability and immune regulation. To put it simply, amaranth isn't just a superfood, it's a longevity tool, a molecular ally in your fight against sarcopenia. It nourishes your muscles, fuels your mitochondria, calms your inflammation, and sends a powerful signal to your body. Stay strong, keep building, don't sit, slow down. In the end, the story of amaranth is the story of a simple seed doing something extraordinary, reawakening the biological potential that still exists within you even after 60. This isn't about chasing youth. It's about reclaiming function, strength, vitality. Because aging isn't about the years you've lived. It's about the signals your body receives. And amaranth quite literally feeds the signal to stay alive and strong. One of the most fascinating discoveries in longevity science over the past 2 decades is that growth and aging are deeply interconnected, governed by a few core molecular pathways that act like central switches. These switches control how your cells respond to stress, how they regenerate, and how they allocate energy. Understanding, and more importantly, manipulating these pathways allows us to delay aging, rebuild strength, and extend health span well beyond what we once thought was possible. At the heart of this regulation are 2 key players, MTOR and AMPK. MTOR, short for mechanistic target of rapamycin, is the body's primary growth switch. When it's activated, cells enter an anabolic state. They grow, divide, build proteins, and increase biomass. In youth, this is essential. But here's the catch. Chronic activation of mTOR, especially in aging, is linked to accelerated aging, cancer progression, and metabolic dysfunction. So for years, longevity researchers, myself included, focused on inhibiting mTOR to extend lifespan. This is why caloric restriction, fasting, and certain compounds like rapamycin have shown such promise. They turn mTOR down, allowing the body to shift into repair and protection mode. But then something interesting happened. We began to realize that completely suppressing mTOR isn't the answer either, especially when it comes to preserving muscle mass and function as we age. Skeletal muscle, unlike many other tissues, relies on well-timed bursts of mTOR activation to initiate muscle protein synthesis. Without these pulses, muscle tissue can't rebuild. It simply continues to atrophy. So the key is balance, strategic activation of mTOR after exercise or nutrient intake, followed by periods of suppression that allow the body to switch into maintenance and repair. This cycling between growth and cleanup is how we mimic youthful metabolic rhythms. This is where amaranth, the ancient grain we're focusing on, plays a surprisingly advanced role, thanks to its unique nutritional profile. Amaranth naturally supports this mTOR AMPK cycling, which is essential for both muscle regeneration and longevity. Let's break that down. This is the first half of the equation. But what makes amaranth truly remarkable from a longevity standpoint is that it doesn't just switch on growth. It also supports the repair and longevity pathways, particularly AMPK and sirtuins. AMPK, or AMP-activated protein kinase, is your cellular energy sensor. When energy is low, AMPK activates and instructs the cell to conserve resources, increase mitochondrial efficiency, break down fat, and initiate autophagy, the cellular equivalent of taking out the trash. It's deeply involved in preventing metabolic diseases, extending lifespan, and enhancing mitochondrial health. Here's what the science shows. When consumed strategically, such as in small portions during the day, or as a post-fasting meal, amaranth helps stimulate mTOR in muscles while not excessively spiking glucose or insulin, allowing AMPK to remain active in other tissues like the liver, brain. This dual activation pattern is powerful. You get the benefits of muscle protein synthesis and strength without compromising the broader systemic benefits of fasting, mitochondrial renewal, and metabolic health. In fact, amaranth may even enhance these benefits due to its high magnesium content, which is known to support both AMPK activation and insulin sensitivity. And this dynamic interplay between MTOR and AMPK is not just about short-term performance, it's about preserving the regenerative potential of your cells as you age. You see, in aging research, one of the emerging theories is that our stem cells lose their ability to oscillate between active and quiescent states. They get stuck either constantly active and exhausted, or dormant and unresponsive. This loss of flexibility leads to degeneration in tissues like muscle, bone, and even brain. By cycling between growth MTOR and repair AMPK, we can help restore that flexibility, keeping stem cells youthful, responsive, and ready to regenerate. This is the essence of what I mean when I say aging is plastic, it's malleable, and we can shape it if we learn how to feed the system the right signals. Amaranth, in this context, becomes more than a source of calories. It becomes a biochemical messenger. One that says, build when it's time to build, repair when it's time to repair. That's the language of longevity. Even more, amaranth contains natural phytonutrients and antioxidants like squalane and polyphenols, which act as mild stressors to the body, what we call hormetic agents. These compounds trigger adaptive responses at the cellular level, increasing the expression of antioxidant genes, DNA repair enzymes, and anti-inflammatory cytokines. In other words, they gently stress the system in a way that makes it stronger over time, much like lifting weights builds muscle through controlled damage and recovery. So now you're getting a full picture. Amaranth doesn't just offer fuel, it offers information, nutritional signals that tell your muscles to grow, your mitochondria to multiply, and your cells to protect themselves from the wear and tear of time. And this isn't theoretical. In human studies, older adults who consume higher quality complete plant proteins, especially in combination with resistance training, see greater improvements in lean body mass, strength, and mobility than those who simply increase calories or even total protein intake. The key is not eating more, it's eating smarter. By choosing a grain like amaranth, one that activates muscle and longevity pathways simultaneously, you are aligning with the biology of youthful adaptation. You are supporting your body's ability to toggle between growth and renewal, just as it did in your 20s and 30s. And that's the lesson we're learning again and again in aging science. Longevity isn't about blocking aging, it's about restoring balance. It's not about stopping time. So whether you're 60, 70, or even 80, the capacity to build muscle and live stronger is still there. The question is, are you sending the right signals? Amaranth, in its simplicity, is one of those signals, a grain that knows when to grow and when to repair, just like your body should. One of the most overlooked elements of aging, and one of the most critical, is the slow, chronic accumulation of inflammation and mitochondrial dysfunction in the body. These two processes work hand in hand, quietly accelerating the aging of tissues, weakening muscle fibers, and setting the stage for diseases we associate with age: sarcopenia, diabetes, cardiovascular decline, and even neurodegeneration. The good news? They're not irreversible. In fact, the body is remarkably responsive to the right molecular inputs, especially nutrients that target both inflammation and mitochondrial repair. And that's where the real brilliance of amaranth comes into play. To begin with, let's talk about inflammation, a natural response the body uses to deal with stress, injury, or infection. In acute situations, it's protective. But as we age, many people enter a state of chronic, low-grade inflammation, sometimes called inflammaging. This inflammation comes not from injury or infection, but from cellular debris, senescent cells, metabolic stress, and immune dysfunction. You feel it not just as stiffness or swelling, but as fatigue, loss of resilience, slow recovery, and loss of muscle mass. Over time, this constant inflammatory state erodes the ability of your tissues to regenerate, and mitochondria are especially vulnerable. Now, amaranth contains a range of compounds that quench inflammation naturally, not by suppressing it like synthetic drugs do, but by modulating the very pathways that regulate the inflammatory response. Among them are polyphenols, peptides, and notably squalene, a naturally occurring antioxidant and precursor to important hormones. Squalene is often praised for its skincare benefits, but its real power lies within the cell. It is lipid-soluble, allowing it to integrate into cellular membranes, particularly those of mitochondria, where it neutralizes reactive oxygen species roles and protects lipid structures from oxidative damage. That's vital, because oxidative stress, especially in mitochondria, is one of the leading drivers of muscle degradation and aging. Your mitochondria, the energy powerhouses of the cell, are responsible for producing ATP, the fuel your muscles need to contract, repair, and grow. As we age, mitochondria lose efficiency, produce more rows, and signal less effectively with the nucleus. This leads to a downward spiral: less energy, more damage, slower recovery, more fatigue. What amaranth does is help interrupt that spiral. Its antioxidants reduce urease production and stabilize mitochondrial membranes. But just as important are its cofactors, nutrients like magnesium, calcium, iron, and phosphorus, which play critical roles in ATP production, muscle contraction, and redox balance. Magnesium, for example, is essential for the enzymatic activity of ATP synthase, the protein that produces ATP in mitochondria. Without enough magnesium, your mitochondria can't generate energy efficiently, leading to more oxidative stress and muscle weakness. And studies show that many older adults are chronically deficient in magnesium, despite its critical role in muscle function and inflammation control. Amaranth provides a natural bioavailable source of magnesium, along with iron, which helps deliver oxygen to working muscles via hemoglobin, and phosphorus, which forms part of the very energy molecules like ATP and creatine phosphate that power muscle contractions. The iron in amaranth is also important for another reason. It supports mitochondrial biogenesis, the process by which cells make new mitochondria. This is one of the most important adaptations to exercise and caloric restriction, two of the most well-known longevity interventions, and we now know that certain nutrients can amplify this response, supporting the body's innate ability to renew and replenish energy-producing organelles. But here sits where it gets even more interesting. Some of the bioactive peptides in amaranth have been shown in research to downregulate pro-inflammatory cytokines like TNF-alpha and IL-6, two major players in the chronic inflammation associated with aging and sarcopenia. At the same time, they increase the production of anti-inflammatory mediators like IL-10, creating a more balanced immune response. From a systems biology perspective, this makes perfect sense. Your muscles are heavily dependent on mitochondrial energy and extremely sensitive to inflammatory signals. If your mitochondria are damaged or underfueled, muscles fatigue quickly. If your body is inflamed, protein synthesis slows, recovery becomes harder, and catabolic muscle wasting signals take over. What we want, instead, is to support the cellular environment where muscle can thrive. That means minimizing chronic inflammation, protecting mitochondrial integrity, and ensuring the nutrient cofactors needed for energy production and repair are always available. Amaranth, in this context, becomes more than just a food. It becomes a mitochondrial adaptogen, a daily tool that provides the biochemical building blocks to restore balance in muscle cells and optimize the internal conditions for regeneration. And we're not just talking about theory here. Animal studies have shown that diets supplemented with amaranth oil or grain result in improved antioxidant status, lower markers of inflammation, and better endurance performance. And early human data supports its benefits in blood pressure, lipid control, and glycemic response, all of which are intimately tied to mitochondrial and muscle health. It's also worth pointing out that amaranth is easy on the digestive system, making it suitable for older adults who may struggle with heavier proteins or inflammatory foods. Its soluble fiber content also supports gut health, which in turn influences systemic inflammation via the gut-muscle axis, a new and rapidly growing area of longevity research. The gut, as it turns out, may play a huge role in regulating muscle mass, nutrient absorption, and immune function. So when we talk about anti-inflammatory and mitochondrial nutrients, we're also talking about nourishing the microbiome, reducing endotoxin exposure, and improving the body's overall resilience. So when you add amaranth to your routine, you start not just eating to build muscle, you start sending molecular signals that say, improve mitochondrial efficiency, lower inflammation, protect and energize my cells. Give my body the tools to repair, not just survive. That's how we must think about food in this new era of health, as molecular medicine, as something that can interact with our biology in ways that go far beyond vitamins and minerals. And few foods offer as broad and deep a spectrum of benefits as amaranth. It's not flashy, it's not exotic, but it's deeply intelligent from a cellular perspective. In the fight against sarcopenia, fatigue, and frailty, your greatest weapons are not always found in prescriptions or laboratories. Sometimes they're found in your kitchen, in the form of a seed that's been quietly delivering strength, energy, and resilience for thousands of years. Amaranth, when understood through the lens of aging biology, is not just nourishment, it's cellular defense. And that's exactly what your body needs after 60. One of the most empowering truths to emerge from the science of aging is that you don't need a radical intervention or expensive supplement to reclaim strength after 60. Sometimes it's the small, consistent decisions made daily that send the most powerful signals to your cells. When it comes to rebuilding muscle, especially in the face of age-related decline like sarcopenia, how you eat and when you eat can be as important as what you eat. This is where amaranth, an ancient, nutrient-dense pseudograin, offers a quiet revolution. Many people in their 60s, 70s, and beyond have been told a discouraging message that muscle loss is a natural, irreversible part of aging. But this is increasingly being challenged by evidence. In fact, we now understand that muscle remains remarkably responsive to anabolic stimuli like resistance training and strategic nutrition well into advanced age. The key is timing and quality. So how does amaranth fit into this picture? Let's start with the foundational truth to build muscle. Especially in an aging body, you need a trigger, a reason for the muscle to grow. That trigger comes primarily through mechanical load, that is, resistance training, and is reinforced by nutritional signals that support protein synthesis, hormone production, and mitochondrial energy output. Amaranth provides multiple layers of this support, not just in its protein content, but through its unique micronutrients, amino acid profile, and metabolic properties. Practically speaking, just 1/2 cup of cooked amaranth per day can deliver a highly effective dose of complete plant protein, rich in lysine and leucine, 2 amino acids that are especially effective at stimulating muscle protein synthesis via MTOR activation when consumed at the right time. Let's pause here. Why does timing matter so much? Because as we age, our bodies develop anabolic resistance, a reduced ability to convert dietary protein into muscle mass. What this means is that the same meal that built muscle in your 30s may no longer be sufficient in your 60s unless it is precisely optimized. The body needs a clear, strong signal to initiate rebuilding. That signal is most effectively delivered post-exercise or post-fasting when the muscle cells are especially receptive and the hormonal environment favors protein synthesis. This is where amaranth shines. When consumed within the post-workout window, roughly 30 to 90 minutes after resistance training, amaranth's amino acids enter circulation at a time when mTOR is primed, muscle satellite cells are active, and the body is most capable of rebuilding damaged fibers. That's the ideal moment to give your body the raw materials it needs to grow stronger. But what if you're not lifting weights? Does it still help? Absolutely. Even without formal resistance training, amaranth supports muscle preservation in sedentary or low-activity adults by delivering the amino acids and cofactors necessary to maintain lean mass, regulate inflammation, and support mitochondrial energy production. When combined with daily movement, even light bodyweight exercises or walking, the effects are amplified. Now let's talk about versatility and simplicity, because consistency is key. For any nutrient strategy to be effective, it has to be sustainable, easy to incorporate, and enjoyable. That's another advantage of amaranth. It's extremely adaptable in the kitchen. You can cook amaranth as a porridge for breakfast, similar to oatmeal but with more protein and less sugar. Add cinnamon, chia seeds, a few berries, or a spoonful of Greek yogurt, and you've got a longevity-optimized meal that supports metabolic balance and muscle repair. For lunch or dinner, use amaranth as a base for soups, grain bowls, or mixed with vegetables and legumes. You can even blend it into smoothies in its popped form, or bake it into nutrient-dense bars for convenient post-exercise snacks. Another key insight is that amaranth's glycemic load is moderate, especially when combined with fiber, fat, or protein, which means it doesn't cause sharp blood sugar spikes. This matters more than many realize. High postprandial glucose is one of the silent accelerators of aging, triggering oxidative stress, insulin resistance, and inflammation. A food that supports muscle growth without metabolic disruption is exactly what we look for in the aging toolkit. And let's not forget about micronutrients. As mentioned earlier, amaranth is a rich source of magnesium, calcium, iron, and phosphorus, each essential for muscle contraction, oxygen delivery, bone integrity, and ATP production. These are not trivial bonuses. They are core ingredients of cellular energy and strength. Most multivitamins don't deliver these nutrients in meaningful amounts or in bioavailable form. Amaranth does. We've also touched on squalene, a unique antioxidant present in amaranth, which helps stabilize mitochondrial membranes and protect against oxidative damage. Mitochondrial decline is one of the earliest and most insidious hallmarks of aging. Without efficient mitochondria, your muscles lose endurance, your brain fogs, and your body tires more easily. That's not just aging, it's a symptom of energy collapse at the cellular level. Now, let's put this into the context of longevity thinking. In my lab at Harvard, we study how small molecules and interventions can reprogram the epigenome, restore youthful gene expression, and delay the diseases of aging. But the front line of this work doesn't happen in the lab. It happens at the dinner table in the choices we make every day. When you choose to eat amaranth regularly, you're choosing a food that acts at multiple levels of aging biology. It activates muscle regeneration through MTOR and amino acid signaling. It supports mitochondrial energy production with minerals and antioxidants. It lowers chronic inflammation, one of the drivers of muscle catabolism, and it's gentle on blood sugar, supporting metabolic homeostasis. This is the new model of aging. Well, not relying on a single magic pill or intervention, but stacking smart, low-friction daily habits that send the right signals to your body. Amaranth may be just one habit, but its impact is compounded because it touches so many essential systems at once. In this way, you can think of amaranth not just as food, but as a daily signal, a message sent to your muscles, your mitochondria, your genome that says you are still capable, you still have work to do, you still have work to do, you still have work to do, you're still alive. And is it that what longevity is really about? So tomorrow morning, or after your next walk or workout, don't overthink it. Just cook a small pot of amaranth. Stir in a few ingredients you enjoy. Eat slowly. Let your body absorb what it's been asking for. Because sometimes the most powerful interventions are also the simplest. And sometimes rebuilding strength after 60 begins with something as small as a spoonful of seeds and a few minutes of intention.